It's no secret that foul baiting has become a contentious topic in the NBA and has caused fans to negatively look on certain players and the overall game. Famously, a presumptive MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is known as an apparent free throw merchant, and the narrative has been that he's apparently not an ethical hooper since he apparently manipulates the refs in any way he can. Jalen Brunson is a poster boy as well, since people claim that he prematurely stops and slams into defenders to draw contact, and even flails on jumpers to get free throws to benefit on what aren't natural basketball plays. Joel Embiid, who's 7'1", 280 plus pounds, somersaults and flops in ways that could ultimately get him or someone else hurt. And of course, the player who has been the cover athlete for foul baiting, for trying different quirky jerky ways of getting to the line over the past decade, has to be James Harden, a player who has hooked arms with players to draw contact and scared teams so much with his combination of offensive prowess and ability to get to the line that teams were playing defense with hands behind their backs or even just allowing him to blow by them out of fear of fouling. These are prime examples of stars who supposedly try to manipulate the rule book and officiating in order to gain an advantage on the floor, but foul baiting or even egregious flopping aren't peculiar to these four, as we literally have many cases of stars trying a host of things so they can draw fouls as well. However, we need to make a clear distinction here. A player getting to the line many times doesn't inherently mean that they're cheating the system in any way possible in order to get fouls, and I don't think people are up in arms about specifically how many free throw attempts per game a particular player is getting. For example, a player like Giannis, who routinely has aggressive drives to the rim and plays bully ball on the floor on the half court in transition, led the NBA in free throw attempts this season at 10.6, a whole 1.8 more per game than Shai, and Giannis still leads the league in free throws in the playoffs at a whopping 12.5 free throw attempts a game. However, the narrative about Giannis and the free throw line more so has to do with the amount of time he takes at the free throw line than the amount of attempts that he gets. Plus, this Pacers fan's amazing for doing this. The same thing applies to Shaq. Because of his sheer physicality, being the most dominant force in the league since Wilt, and teams hacking him to send him to the line since he was a poor free throw shooter, Shaq was getting to the line 10 to 13 times a game during his stints with the LA Lakers. However, the narrative about Shaq and the free throw line surrounds how bad he was from the line than the attempts that he was getting. The thing is, outside of Stephen Curry, who's one of the best scorers we've seen without having a crazy amount of free throw attempts, you'd be hard pressed to find an elite scorer who didn't get to the line at a decent rate. From 1987 to 1991, Michael Jordan was getting to the line 9.8 times a game, yet none of his fans or the general public are addressing him as the free throw merchant. From 2005 to 2009, Kobe Bryant got to the line 9.2 times a game, and from 2006 to 2010, Dwayne Wade was getting to the line 9.8 times a game. These stars aren't just getting to the line, but they have savvy ways of doing so. The league cracked down on this, but Kevin Durant would spam the rip-through move to get OKC to the bonus so that he could get to the line. You know who else was doing this move? Chris Paul, and there was pretty much nothing you could do about it. We just spoke about Shaq and Giannis using their sheer physicality and play styles to get calls, but lighter or more agile players who do much of their work from the outside are obviously going to be working in different ways to get to the line. These perimeter players, especially the most cerebral and calculated minds, are going to do everything they can in order to take full advantage of the rulebook to gain an advantage for their team. And there is nothing inherently wrong with this. These are some of the best competitors in the world, and getting to the line is obviously an advantageous strategy to catch a breather, get your team some points on the board, get your team to the bonus, and making the defense think long and hard about their approach in subsequent possessions. However, foul baiting and even flopping are arts in themselves, and definitely cast a dark cloud on the free throw conversation altogether. Let's look at Dwayne Wade specifically. Dwayne Wade was one of the best slashing guards to ever do it, and got to the line so much that Mark Cuban alluded to the fact that the 2006 NBA Finals might have been rigged. That's a whole conversation for another day. But while Wade was an attacker of the rim, we obviously saw that he was initiating unnatural contact in crazy ways that would have got people in uproar and up in arms in 2025. One of the ways Wade drew fouls was his signature pump fake, taking advantage of aggressive defenders while seeking the contact and attempting to actually get a three-point play. To Wade's credit, he's actually attempting to still score on these opportunities, but in many of these attempts, it's not the defender who's initiating the contact. Wade would lunge forward and initiate the contact and would be going to the line. This obviously should be an offensive foul, if anything, since he's literally throwing himself into the defender, or at least a no call. But it pretty much made Wade unstoppable. This isn't to diminish Wade's legacy in any way, as he's still an all-time great shooting guard regardless, and wasn't scoring all of his points through his method at the free throw line. And ultimately, it's up to the refs to determine whether or not this is a defensive foul or a no call. But based off what the league memo was just a few years ago, these were supposed to be emphasized and eliminated altogether by the NBA. League officials were supposed to not call a foul on this play if the offensive player initiated contact with the defender, and use numerous examples of that preseason to suggest that we were done with this completely in the NBA for that season and moving forward. However, it's 2025, and we're still seeing multiple instances of players doing the exact same thing in the 2025 playoffs. Again, there's nothing wrong in doing anything to manipulate the rulebook, or being savvy enough to make your defenders play catch up and get them to commit a foul that they didn't necessarily want to. But it's ultimately up to the officials to make no calls here when the offensive player is initiating contact, so they can dissuade other stars from following suit. Here's a perfect example of this. Jalen Brunson gets Asar Thompson to bite on this pump fake, but it's clear as day that it leans forward to initiate the contact. This should be a no call based off what the mandate was a few years ago, but he's given 3 free throws in the fourth quarter of a pivotal game 2. He does the same thing to Tobias Harris in the exact same game, and again was able to draw the foul. This isn't to say that Jalen Brunson is some free throw merchant that only lives and dies by the free throw line, and that all of his fouls are illegitimate due to committing unnatural basketball plays. He's just one of the main examples as someone who goes to the line a ton in the playoffs. Then we have flopping, which has been a problem for many years now, but definitely gets my attention since the league also promised to crack down on it. But it's 2025 and nothing has been done. Players are supposed to get technical fouls and fines for flopping, but when's the last time you've seen a ref actually give a technical foul for flopping in the NBA? It's been ages. Embiid's obviously the main example as to why people hate flopping in the league, and players are unfortunately rewarded for flopping. The thing is, some players might feel the need to take matters into their own hands to flop because we have egregious examples of superstars getting fouled and getting absolutely no whistle just because the refs didn't see the contact, deemed the contact to be minimum, or want to set the tone of a more physical game. NBA officiating is ultimately the only way we can see change on this front, because them refusing to reward players who make unnatural basketball plays to get unfair advantages will ultimately discourage players for committing such acts. I do get that refs are humans and are bound to make mistakes and might not always ref a consistent game, but doing away with the initiatives that the league set a few years back actually sets the league back and doesn't help the watchability of it at all. With that being said, let me know your thoughts on foul baiting and flopping in the NBA and how it's affected your enjoyment of the league. Let me know textbook examples of ways players are manipulating the rulebook to their advantage through unnatural basketball plays, and also share a few names of players that are committing such acts. Be sure to check out my last video on the importance of role players in the current NBA, as they're just as important as having stars today. Be sure to leave a like on the video, as that makes a massive difference for the channel, and sub for more content like this. Hope to see you all in the next one, and stay tuned.